Okay, and I'm back. So the first thing that we want to do whenever we can is identify the stain, because there's a lot of different things it could be, and it could require quite a different process depending on what it is. They do have a section on the chart for unknown, but I try not to do that unless I just can't figure it out. And also, the more you do this, the more you start to recognize what something probably was. Like this was something that probably had sugar in it. It was sticky, and it just kind of got matted down and disgusting. So I don't know if y'all will be able to hear this, but this is. You see how it's, I don't know if it shows up, but that's like actually leaving like a scratch mark. Yeah, that's like a solid crust on there. Now if this were a carpet that we wanted to save, that would be a pretty cool feather in your cap to get some, like if your boss sees that and you get it out, then, you know, that makes you a valuable employee. So number one here is a gel solvent. And this is what we would use for chewing gum, or a lot of the time paint, or anything that's really matted down like this. I mentioned earlier that you could use this bone scraper for poking holes, but this is so tough and just on there that I don't think that's gonna happen. In fact, I didn't actually feel this until just now when I got down here. Well, maybe I could get a couple little divots in here, and what the divots do is that helps this to not just sit on top, because it will soften up the top, but that lets it kind of penetrate down and get it a little bit better. This is the worst thing like this that I've ever seen, and I think it might have been syrup, or like I said, just like a really sugary drink. So I'm probably gonna have to do this a couple times to get it out, if it comes out at all. That's another thing that's an important distinction, is that you don't know until you try, but there are things that just, you know, not just really hard crusty stuff like this, but there might be a carpet that still has a nice lush texture that has like a brown coffee stain or something that sometimes you just can't get them out. So like we have independent and assisted living. On the independent side, residents can have their own chemicals. So unfortunately, a lot of people will buy stuff like OxyClean and, you know, like the commonly available, like you know, pet cleaners that they would get at the pet store, and a lot of that stuff is really bad. Like OxyClean, oxygen is a bleaching agent. So the more you use OxyClean, the closer you get to permanently bleaching out a carpet. And so, and I mean, there's a ton of things that sometimes residents, you know, a lot of the residents are afraid they're going to get in trouble. Like sometimes they won't tell you that they have a spot on their carpet. Some of them will hound you to the ends of the earth about it, but some of them will try and hide it. And then, you know, and they might even put like a mat or something like that over it. So, you know, there's things, you know, there's issues with dementia that come into factor there, but but sometimes they'll try to clean it up themselves, and they might, you know, I mentioned earlier the guy that bleached out the carpet, they might have put 3 or 4 different chemicals on here already by the time you get to it. So what I like to do is, if it's, like, let's say it's in a dining room, if it's next to somebody's chair, your best resource in a dining room is the dining room servers, because they know what people eat and drink every day. So like, if it's somebody that needs to have a thickener for their fluids, or if it's somebody who only drinks decaffeinated coffee, they're gonna know that. And okay, so why would it matter if somebody is drinking regular or decaffeinated coffee? Because you actually use a different chemical. On a previous section of this video, I was talking about 9A and 9B. 9A is for natural tannins that we would find in like coffee and tea, 9B is for, or I'm sorry, 10. 10 is for natural stains, like, tannin. Number 9 is for synthetic dyes. So that's what we would use on like Kool-Aid or cough syrup or, sports drinks and that kind of thing. But with decaffeinated coffee, as part of the decaffeinating process, they have some way of bleaching the grounds, and then they add a synthetic dye back into it to make it look like coffee again, because nobody would use it if they didn't do that. It would look like this weird, disgusting thing, and it kind of is. But so it's a totally different chemical that, even though they look the same on the carpet, if it's decaffeinated coffee and you use the process for regular coffee, it won't work. So if it's on the assisted side, if it's in a room that's recently vacated, if a resident passed away or moved out, your nurse's aides will know what is likely to have been spilled in their room. Maybe it was somebody who has to have Ensure once a day and then they spilled it, or it could be anything like that. So your dining room associates and also your nurse's aides for the assisted side are going to be really good ways for you to try and identify the stains if you can't tell right off the bat by looking at it. Okay, so I've got my gel here. You want to shake this up pretty well, and with the gel you want to cover the entire area, so I'm going to use quite a bit of it to do this. And there's some extra, so I'm just gonna move it around with the bone scraper here. And that's still pretty crusty coming out a little, so I'm gonna do a little more around the edge there. Spread that around. Okay, so now this has to sit for 10 minutes. So I'm going to make a note of the time after I close up my bottle. And I mentioned earlier that this will bleach carpets. One of our painters, one of the guys that works in maintenance that does most of the painting here, he put some of this down. I had given him a bottle in case he had like any little droplets. He put it on and left it overnight. And then when he went to clean it the next day, it left these little white spots. So he came to get me, and I looked at it, and it had been bleached. When carpet fibers have been bleached, you can't. It chemically changes the fiber so that it will not accept pigment, and that means that you can't dye it back to the original color, even if you have the right dye for it. So bleach is permanent. So you don't. I was talking earlier about how you don't want to leave this stuff longer than that 10 to 15 minute window. It needs at least 10 minutes, no longer than 15. So I just made a note of the time, and I'll come back to that. It would be really, really boring for y'all to sit here and watch that time by for 10 minutes. So I'm going to move the camera over. Let's see, make sure this is still going here. Yes, okay. Let's do, I think that this is probably coffee, and I don't know whether she drank decaf or regular, so if I don't know for sure, then I just assume it was regular. I'll try that, and if it doesn't come out, there's not really any harm done, especially on this carpet because it's going to be replaced, but then I'll have a second shot at it with the decaf formula. Okay, let's see, hopefully this is going to show up okay. By the way, while I was doing all the stuff with the chemicals, I had already plugged in my mini extractor. And I'll show y'all the one. I have the easy spot. On the back, there are 3 switches. One is for the motor, one is for the vacuum, and one is for the heating element. And then if y'all have, it's really cool to have a mini extractor with the heater on it, because a lot of the mini extractors in the market don't have that. So if you have it, the first thing I would do while you're putting in your chemical and you have to wait anyway, get the mini extractor set up and get the heater going so that when you go to use it, it's already heated up and you don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to show y'all a trick with that in a minute too. But first I'm going to do some chemicals. So with the coffee, I know that because I do this all the time, I know that the first steps are 3 and 4. So I have number 3 is release. So okay, and then I know that number 4 here. Okay, so it's best to do those on the mist setting instead of on the stream. And now, I was talking about agitation earlier. With the gel, you just want it to sit there, and then the agitation will come a little bit later. But with the sprays, with the liquid ones, let's see if, hopefully I don't have to take the camera off its thing to do this. This is a long poled scrub brush, and it has like a soft bristle and a hard bristle. I don't, whichever one, I don't care, but I like to use a brush on a pole because, especially, for one thing, you have the chemicals. For another thing, it could be like urine or feces or something like that. If you have a long pole and you're doing that, just like, like the bristles on a toothbrush, when you flick them and you get that spray pattern, there's nothing on the carpet that I want to splash up in my face if I'm on my hands and knees with the hand brush scrubbing away on that. So you always keep a long handled pole with a brush on it handy, and that's just safer. Because even if it's something completely benign, you don't want these chemicals getting in your eyes. Okay, and that actually, I think that looks a little bit better already, and that happens a lot. You might be tempted, so sometimes when I've been doing coffee stains, I'll do 3 and 4, and then I'll extract. And then I'll go, wow, I can't even see it anymore. I won't go ahead and do the number 10. But then the next day when it's dry, you'll be able to see it again, and you end up coming back and doing the number 10 step anyway. So I strongly urge you, you have your gear set up, you have your mini extractor out, just go ahead and do the extra step. Okay, I need to look at my watch. So I've got another 5 minutes to go on the gel, and then about another 9 minutes to go on the coffee. Okay, so I want to show y'all a trick with the mini extractor. So I mentioned that I've had the heat running, but I want to make sure that the water comes out hot when I first press the trigger down. So what I'm going to do is, I need to start running the hot water through there right now. And so what I like to do, there's a latch on the back of the mini extractor here, and that secures the top down to the bottom. So the top has the clean water tank, the top has the recovery tank and the hose attached to it. And then here you have the motor and the clean water tank. So I'll just put the nozzle right in the top of the clean water tank, and of course I need to turn the pump on. So I've got my fingers on this brass fitting here, and I can feel when this turns warm, then I know that I've got warm water cycling all the way through. Okay. So that's that, and then if you look on the coffee, let's see if I can make this make sense. This is the spot I treated. I did not treat that because I wanted you to see, as I keep working on the coffee spot, I wanted you to see the contrast between the treated one and the untreated one. So hopefully that works out well. And I think I'll leave this set up about like that so that we can just see all the spots together without having to go back and forth between them. And I still have a couple minutes before I can start on the gel, and I have to do the gel before the coffee, so I'm going to shut this down because I just don't really have anything witty to say right now.